The camera movement in Homecoming is just spectacular. I mean, your use of camera movement is really, really good. And like you said, it never kind of stops. Like you're always moving through a scene in a way. And it's interesting to hear you say that sort of lends to the unsettling, which kind of makes sense because you're never really settled as you're viewing the scene. But they're also really elegant. Like a lot of times people will create fear and anxiety in film and filmmaking with kind of shaky cameras and high frame rates, and they're kind of moving around all over the place. You guys have that same kind of fearful feeling with these slow, elegant kind of, I can't think of the word, but there's the slowness and the elegance in the camera move is also creating this sense of weary.
Right.
And I think it's just a really great use of movement. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the way you've moved the camera and maybe a scene or two that, really illustrates that?
Sure. I mean, yeah, you're right. I think that we called it creepy. We wanted the camera always to be creeping or creepy.
Yeah.
Creep was an adjective that was thrown around quite a bit, for the purpose of creating tension. There were, quite a few moments where we tried to capture that. I think even in the opening sequence where Jackie's at night and she's climbing out of the forest and we're pulling back with her through the woods. And this was all, and I guess technically I'll tell you how we did it. It was like we're on a techno crane. And I mean, in this like very difficult location up in Lake Arrowhead, where we had like a 30-foot techno crane. And then it's like literally armed off this precipice, following Jackie up this hill. And then she arrives at the road. It's at night. There's one car. There's a lone street light. And we talked about doing this in cuts and all these different variations. And I think at the end of the day, Kyle and I were like, let's try to speak to what you're talking about, to keep rather than doing it in cuts, let's try to keep this creepy element to it where the camera just settles with her when she lands. She turns away. She has this, I don't know what you call it, the car remote, I guess, the unlock car thing. Yes. So she tries.
That's what it's called technically. It's called the unlock car thing. This thing.
That's about as technical as I get with camera equipment as well. So we're right on course. Bring in the flux capacitor.
Exactly.
Anyway, so she continues down the road, and then the techno crane. It was on a drivable base. So as she's walking down the road, once again to get into that very subjective viewpoint, we're following with her from behind her. We're seeing what she's seeing. We're experiencing what she's seeing, and we telescope out. And then the camera starts to move on the base. And then as she walks off into the distance, we start to boom up. So, that was one idea where we wanted to, rather than doing it cuts, rather than being handheld, let's just keep this very fluid, very meditative, very creepy camera move that continues. And let's, try to come up with some tools and ways and means of carrying that shot out through the entire sequence.
Did you have the techno crane with you the entire series or the entire season?
No, we day played it. I mean, I think we of course had it often. I think we had a couple days away, a couple days a week. One thing that we used almost daily, which was a carryover from season 1 and something that I gleaned from Todd in our conversations, is we used the Oculus head, a remote head on the dolly, and shot quite a bit of the show on that device. In particular, these kind of flowing and long sequence shots. So that was a heavy lifting device.
So hold on, I'm looking it up right now. The Oculus head you just had that on the dolly, so you had control over the pan and tilt and all that. You basically could control it and just use that as that's your crane, the dolly.
Absolutely, it was our dolly. Exactly. And so any tracking shots, and the beauty of the Oculus head is such an amazing piece of equipment is that often, if we are in, for example, here's a good example, is in the hospital set. Like we never laid track. And we have all these very long, probing, 360-degree shots sometimes that are all done with Mark Gelnish, super talented operator, tucked away in the corner, and it's just the dolly grip, Kyle Cardigan with the camera, with the head, and able to do these, fairly complex, orchestrated moves without the cumbersome of having track or dance floor or things like that.
Watching the first episode, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I know there's going to be an overhead shot. There has to be. This is Homecoming. There's got to be a cool overhead shot. And you delivered at the end through the hotel when you're going from I can't remember the room you're going from, but you go from one room to Jackie's room. And
Right.
like, I just want to talk about the logistics of something like that. Are you on a stage? I'm assuming you have to be in order to have that access. But like,
Right.
talk to me about the logistics of one of those really kind of creamy, smooth overhead shots that are sort of like a necessity for Homecoming.
Right. Well, I will say this: Kyle Alvarez, which is probably a big part of the reason, or one of the reasons he's doing season 2, is that we've done a couple movies together, and the overhead moving shot is kind of a staple of Kyle's as well. So we have a little bit of a track record in coming into the Homecoming world. But that scene in particular, and I think it's also is part of season 1, is designing the sets, which is a big component to accommodate those type of shots. And of course, they did it on a massive scale for season 1. And this, season 2 is a little bit more on location. It doesn't have the Homecoming facility. But that being said, I think almost every set we had some type of design element that would facilitate us being able to do either overhead shots or tracking shots, some component to facilitate that. And that one in particular, we had, the hotel was designed to accommodate us being able to get a crane in, once again, a techno crane, over the set to allow for us, to do the shot. And once again, we talked about different ways of doing it, whether it be a cable cam or some kind of truss system. But I think in the end, we put a techno crane we built it up on a platform over the set and simply it was on the zoom lens as well, which added some complication. But to start in the bedroom, come into the bathroom, and then be able to arm in and zoom in at the same time down to Jackie at the sink as she's kind of discovering that this tattoo she has is not real. And so to incorporate, a tracking, a zooming, a booming, and a spinning all into one shot, it's fairly complicated, and on screen you look at it and you're like, oh, it's not that, it's how interesting. But then it's like trying to actually come up with the way to accomplish that shot is, no small feat. But we had an amazing crew that to this day, I'm just like, I don't know how they pulled half this stuff off.